I was etching a phoenix onto a client's shoulder blade when Sister Jennifer Wilson walked into my tattoo parlor, still wearing her habit. The needle in my hand faltered, leaving a momentary gap in the line work. My client, a burly man with tears streaming down his face from the pain, didn't notice, but I did. The holy and the profane, face to face in my little shop called Sinful Ink. "I'll be with you in a minute," I called out, trying to sound casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. What the hell was a nun doing in my shop? Arlington wasn't exactly brimming with religious types looking for body art. The autumn rain pelted against the windows, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the buzz of my tattoo machine. The sister stood awkwardly by the door, clutching something to her chest, her blonde hair peeking out from beneath her veil. Those blue eyes, clear as a summer sky, darted around the shop, taking in the flash art of demons, pin-up girls, and sacred hearts that adorned my walls. "Almost done here," I said, wiping away excess ink from the man's skin. The familiar scent of antiseptic mixed with the metallic tang of blood filled my nostrils. It was the smell of transformation, of permanence. Something told me this nun was looking for both. When I finally finished, bandaged my client, and sent him on his way with aftercare instructions, I turned my attention to my unusual visitor. "Can I help you?" I asked, peeling off my black latex gloves with a snap that made her flinch. "You're Mila Parker," she said. Not a question. The one and only. I ran a hand through my red hair, suddenly self-conscious about the sleeve of tattoos exposed by my tank top. "What brings a sister to my humble establishment? Looking to add some divine inspiration to your skin?" She didn't smile at my joke. Instead, she extended her hands, revealing an old leather-bound book. "Paint, we both wanted this 2 weeks ago. At Timeless Pages Bookshop." The memory hit me like a splash of cold water. Reaching for that antique poetry collection, our fingers brushing, that strange electric current that had passed between us. I'd backed away then, letting her have it. Something about her eyes had unnerved me. "You came all this way to return a book?" I asked, confusion evident in my voice. "No." She opened it carefully, revealing a hidden compartment cut into the pages. Inside lay a small weathered diary. "I came because of what I found inside. I think it belongs to both of us." My throat went dry as she placed the diary on my counter. The name inscribed on its cover made my stomach drop. Elizabeth Parker. "My great-grandmother," I whispered. "And mine was Maria Wilson," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "They're both mentioned in here, along with a man named Thomas Lee." The rain intensified outside, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Sister Jennifer's rosary beads clicked softly against each other as her hands shook. The scent of church incense clung to her clothes, mingling strangely with the smell of ink and antiseptic in my shop. "There's more," she said, her blue eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "According to this diary, your great-grandmother and mine were involved. With each other, and with him." The implications hung in the air between us like smoke. I stared at her, at this woman who had walked into my life carrying fragments of a past I'd never known, wearing the uniform of an institution I'd spent my life rebelling against. "Why bring this to me?" I asked, my voice harsher than I'd intended. She looked down at her hands, then back at me with something like defiance in her eyes. "Because when our hands touched in that bookstore, I felt something I've never felt before, and I think you did too." I wanted to deny it, but the memory of that jolt, that instant recognition, was too fresh, too real. I reached for the diary, our fingers brushing again as I took it from her. This time, neither of us pulled away. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been dreaming about her eyes every night since our encounter. What she didn't know was that I'd sworn off relationships after my last girlfriend left me broken. And what neither of us could possibly have guessed was that this diary would lead us down a path that would challenge everything we thought we knew about ourselves, our families, and the thin line between devotion and desire. The week after Sister Jennifer's visit, business at Sinful Ink hit rock bottom. 3 cancellations in one day left me staring at blank appointment slots and mounting bills. I'd been distracted, making careless errors in my designs. My mind kept drifting to blue eyes and blonde hair peeking out from beneath a nun's habit. "Damn it," I muttered, flipping the sign to closed earlier than usual. Arlington's tattoo scene was competitive enough without me losing my edge. I locked up and headed to my apartment above the shop, the diary tucked under my arm like contraband. That night, I pored over Elizabeth Parker's elegant handwriting by lamplight, tracing the same words Jennifer's fingers had touched. My great-grandmother wrote of secret meetings, stolen kisses, and a passion that defied the conventions of 1922 Arlington. The three of them, Elizabeth, Maria, and Thomas, had created their own world, one where love wasn't constrained by society's rules. "Just like you to leave behind a scandal," I said to the faded photograph of Elizabeth I kept on my nightstand. Her eyes, green like mine, seemed to twinkle with mischief even from beyond the grave. Sleep came fitfully, dreams filled with church bells and the phantom sensation of fingers brushing against mine. I woke to the sound of rain hammering against my windows, autumn announcing itself with a vengeance. 3 days later, I spotted Sister Jennifer across the community center hall during the Arlington Charity Art Auction. My heart did that stupid flutter thing again. She was helping arrange paintings, her movements graceful despite the cumbersome habit. I'd donated a custom tattoo session, mostly because my accountant said I needed the tax write-off. "Didn't expect to see you here," I said, approaching her with feigned casualness. The scent of her, clean linen and something floral, made my head swim. She startled, nearly dropping the watercolor landscape in her hands. "Mila, I volunteer here every month." "Of course you do," I smiled, taking the painting from her and hanging it on the display wall. "Very charitable of you." "Have you read more of the diary?" she asked, lowering her voice. "Every word, twice." I studied her face, searching for a reaction. And your great-grandmother was quite the poet when describing her feelings for mine. A blush crept up her neck, disappearing beneath her collar. "And it was a different time." "Some things don't change," I replied, holding her gaze until she looked away. The auction director called for volunteers, breaking our moment. Throughout the evening, I caught Jennifer watching me as I described my tattoo work to potential bidders. Her eyes lingered on my hands as I gestured, on the colorful ink adorning my arms. Later, as the event wound down, we found ourselves alone in the supply closet, both reaching for the same box of pushpins. "You're very talented," she said suddenly. "Your art, I mean. It's beautiful." "Thanks. Not exactly church-approved beauty, though." She smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. It transformed her face, softening the serious lines around her mouth. "The church appreciates all forms of beauty, even the unconventional ones." "Is that why you're here?" I asked, stepping closer. "Appreciating unconventional beauty?" The closet suddenly felt too small, the air between us charged with something dangerous. Jennifer's breath hitched as I reached past her for the box she'd been trying to grab. My arm brushed against hers and she didn't move away. "I've been thinking about you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "About the diary, about what it means." "And what does it mean, Sister Jennifer?" I was close enough now to see the faint freckles across her nose, to notice how her pupils dilated in the dim light. "I don't know," she whispered. "Oh, that's what scares me." Before I could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her lips against mine, tentative, questioning. The box of pushpins clattered to the floor, tiny metal pieces scattering around our feet like confetti. Her lips were soft, tasting faintly of mint, and when she pulled back, her eyes were wide with shock at her own boldness. "I shouldn't have," she began, but I cut her off by kissing her again, deeper this time. Her hands fluttered uncertainly before settling on my shoulders, neither pushing away nor pulling closer. The supply closet door swung open, flooding the small space with harsh fluorescent light. We jumped apart like guilty teenagers. The auction director stood there, eyebrows raised. "We were just getting supplies," Jennifer explained, her voice unnaturally high as she bent to gather the scattered pushpins. "Right," the director said, clearly unconvinced. "We need help breaking down the displays." After she left, Jennifer wouldn't meet my eyes. "This was a mistake," she whispered. "And took vows. I made promises." "So did our great-grandmothers, probably," I replied. "Didn't stop them." "That's different." Her hands trembled as she clutched her rosary beads. "Is it?" I challenged. "Or are you just scared of what you're feeling?" She left without answering, her habit swishing around her ankles as she hurried away. I watched her go, touching my fingers to my lips where the ghost of her kiss still lingered. The diary had awakened something between us, something that had been dormant for generations, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. What I didn't know then was that Jennifer had already decided to come to my shop the next day, carrying the diary and a lifetime of questions that only I could help her answer. The bell above my shop door jingled the next afternoon. I looked up from sketching a client design to find Jennifer standing there, this time in civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple blue sweater that matched her eyes. Without the habit, she looked younger, vulnerable somehow. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. "You own normal clothes," I said, setting down my pencil. And shocked. "We don't sleep in our habits," she replied with a small smile. "May I come in?" I gestured to the empty chair across from my drawing table. The shop was quiet. Tuesdays always were. To what do I owe the pleasure? More ancestral drama? She placed the diary between us like a peace offering. And I couldn't stop thinking about what we found, about what happened yesterday. The kiss or the diary? I asked bluntly. Her cheeks flushed pink. Both. I shouldn't have run away. Outside, Arlington traffic hummed past my window. Inside, time seemed suspended as we faced each other across my drawing table, the diary between us like a bridge connecting two worlds that should never have intersected. "I've been reading more carefully," she said, opening to a page marked with a ribbon. "There's something strange about how they met. Listen to this. Thomas arranged our meeting as if by chance, but I later learned it was all by design. He wanted us both, from the very beginning." I frowned, taking the diary from her. The paper felt delicate beneath my fingertips, fragile with age and secrets. "You think this Thomas guy orchestrated their meeting? Why?" "Keep reading," she urged. I skimmed the next few entries, my eyes widening. "Holy sh!" I caught myself, glancing at Jennifer. "Sorry. But this is wild. He collected them. Like some kind of, I don't know, relationship collector." "It gets more complicated," Jennifer said, leaning closer. I caught the scent of her shampoo, something clean and floral. "Look at the dates. These entries span almost 3 years. They were together, all three of them, for a long time." We spent the afternoon hunched over the diary, piecing together the story of our great-grandmothers and the man who had brought them together. The shop remained empty of customers, but I hardly noticed. Jennifer's enthusiasm was infectious, her analytical mind catching details I'd missed. "They were in love," she said softly, tracing Elizabeth's handwriting with her finger. "Not just with him, but with each other, maybe even more so." "Does that bother you?" I asked, studying her face. She considered this, her blue eyes thoughtful. "It should, but it doesn't. It feels familiar somehow." The air between us thickened with unspoken words. I cleared my throat. "Want some coffee? I've got a machine in the back." In my tiny break room, our elbows bumped as I prepared 2 mugs. Jennifer examined the flash art on my walls, designs waiting for skin to bring them to life. "Did you draw all these?" she asked, touching a sketch of a phoenix rising from ashes. "Yeah. Art was my salvation when everything else went to hell." I handed her a steaming mug. "What about you? What led you to the church?" Her fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic. Stability, structure. After my parents died, the sisters at St. Mary's were the only family I had. "So, you joined the family business," I said with a half smile. "Something like that." She sipped her coffee, then looked at me over the rim of her mug. "What about your family?" "Just me now. Mom died when I was in college. Dad couldn't handle it, drank himself to death 2 years later." I shrugged, the old pain dulled by time. "Been on my own since then." "I'm sorry," she said, her hand briefly touching mine. The contact sent electricity up my arm. We returned to the diary, finding an entry that made us both gasp. Elizabeth had hidden something inside the book, something meant for Maria's eyes only. "There must be another compartment," Jennifer said, her fingers probing the ancient binding. I grabbed a small tool from my workbench and carefully pried at the back cover. A hidden pocket revealed itself, and from it fell a small yellowed envelope. Inside was a letter, written in different handwriting than the diary, Maria's handwriting. "My dearest Elizabeth," Jennifer read aloud, her voice trembling. "If you're reading this, I've gone through with my plan to leave. Thomas has become dangerous. His jealousy consumes him. He knows about us, about our plan to escape together. Please be careful. Meet me where we first kissed, under the oak at midnight. Bring nothing but yourself. All my love, Maria. Damn, I whispered. This is some serious drama. There's more, Jennifer said, turning the letter over. P.S. I've hidden the locket with both our pictures. He'll never find it where I've placed it. Look to where water meets stone, beneath the angel's watchful eye. We stared at each other, the implications sinking in. The cemetery, Jennifer said suddenly. St. Michael's has a fountain with an angel statue. It's been there since the 1920 seconds. You think the locket might still be there, after all this time? She nodded, excitement lighting her eyes. The church maintains that cemetery meticulously, if it was well hidden. We have to check, I said, already reaching for my jacket. As we left the shop together, the diary safely tucked in Jennifer's bag, I couldn't help but feel we were following in our great-grandmother's footsteps. Two women from different worlds, drawn together by forces beyond our understanding. What we would find at the cemetery would change everything I thought I knew about my family history, and about the woman walking beside me, whose hand occasionally brushed against mine as we made our way through the streets of Arlington, chasing ghosts and secrets long buried. St. Michael's Cemetery was eerily beautiful in the fading afternoon light. Ancient oak trees cast long shadows across weathered gravestones, and the October wind whispered through the branches, sending leaves spiraling to the ground. Jennifer led the way with surprising confidence, navigating the winding paths like she'd walked them 1,000 times. I come here often to pray, she explained, catching my questioning look. There's a peace here you can't find anywhere else. I shivered, pulling my leather jacket tighter. If you say so, cemeteries give me the creeps. Says the woman covered in skulls and death imagery, she teased, nodding at my tattoos. That's different. That's art. We reached the center of the cemetery where a small fountain stood, topped with a weathered angel whose face had been smoothed by decades of rain and snow. Water trickled from a pitcher in the angel's hands into a stone basin below. This has to be it, Jennifer said, kneeling beside the fountain, where water meets stone, beneath the angel's watchful eye. I joined her, running my fingers along the edge of the basin. And if I were hiding something in the 1920 seconds, where would I put it? We searched methodically, checking every crevice and hollow. The sun sank lower, casting an orange glow across the cemetery. Just as I was about to suggest we return with flashlights, Jennifer gasped. Mila, look at this. She pointed to a small stone tile at the base of the fountain that looked slightly different from the others. I worked my fingers around its edges and, with a satisfying scrape, it came loose. Beneath it was a small tarnished locket. Holy shit, I whispered. But they really hid it here. Jennifer's fingers trembled as she picked it up. The locket was heart-shaped, its surface etched with intertwining vines. When she clicked it open, we both held our breath. Inside were two tiny photographs, faded but still clear enough to make out the faces of two young women. One with dark hair and fierce eyes, Elizabeth, my great-grandmother. The other with light hair and a gentle smile, Maria, Jennifer's ancestor. They look so happy, Jennifer murmured, touching the photos gently. And so in love, I added. The way they gazed at each other, even in these small images, left no doubt about their feelings. We sat on a nearby bench, the locket between us, as I pulled out the diary again. Let's see if we can figure out what happened next. The entries following the hidden letter painted a disturbing picture. Thomas Lee had discovered their plan to leave together. Elizabeth wrote of his rage, his threats, his increasing control over both women. Thomas says if he can't have us both, no one will, I read aloud, a chill running down my spine. He's threatened to expose our relationship to the town. Maria would lose everything, her family, her position, her reputation. I fear what he might do. Jennifer leaned closer, her shoulder pressing against mine as she read along. The next entry is dated 3 weeks later. Something must have happened in between. It's done, I continued reading. Thomas is gone. The official story is that he left town for business opportunities out west. Only Maria and I know the truth. The weight of it sits heavy on our souls, but we had no choice. He would have destroyed us all. We looked at each other, the implications clear. Did they kill him? Jennifer whispered, her blue eyes wide. It sounds like it, I said, scanning the next few entries. But they don't say outright. Smart of them. What happened to them after? Did they stay together? I flipped through more pages. Until it looks like they separated for appearance's sake. Maria married some banker 6 months later. Elizabeth moved to Chicago, then came back to Arlington years later. But they remained connected. Jennifer pointed to an entry from 1935. Saw M today at the market. Her youngest has her eyes. Her husband suspects nothing. Our secret remains ours alone. The sun had nearly set now, bathing the cemetery in twilight. Jennifer shivered beside me, and without thinking, I put my arm around her shoulders. She stiffened momentarily, then relaxed against me. Our great-grandmothers shared something extraordinary, she said softly, something dangerous and beautiful. And tragic, I added, and they could never truly be together. Jennifer turned to face me, her features half-shadowed in the dying light. And times are different now. Are they? I asked, thinking of her habit hanging in some closet, of the vows she'd taken. You're still bound by rules that say what we're doing is wrong. What are we doing, Mila? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, I leaned forward and kissed her. Unlike our hurried kiss in the supply closet, this one was slow, deliberate. Her lips were soft against mine, hesitant at first, then responding with increasing confidence. My hand found its way to her hair, fingers tangling in blonde strands as I pulled her closer. When we finally broke apart, her cheeks were flushed, her breathing uneven. The locket had fallen to her lap, our great-grandmother's faces witnessing our moment across the span of a century. We should go, she said, though she made no move to stand. It's getting dark. Jennifer, I said, taking her hand. What happens now? She closed the locket with a soft click and placed it in my palm, folding my fingers over it. And we keep reading. We keep searching. There's more to their story, and ours, than we know yet. As we walked back through the darkening cemetery, the weight of the locket in my pocket felt like a promise, or perhaps a warning from the past. Our great-grandmothers had risked everything for their love. The question hanging between Jennifer and me was whether we were brave enough to do the same. A week after our cemetery discovery, Arlington was hit by the worst winter storm in decades. Snow piled in drifts against buildings, ice coated the roads, and the power grid struggled under the strain. I was putting plastic over my shop windows when Jennifer appeared at my door, snowflakes melting in her hair. The convent lost power, she explained, stamping snow from her boots. Mother Superior sent us to find shelter with friends or family until it's restored. And you came here. I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. She looked down, suddenly uncertain. I can go somewhere else if... No, I said quickly, locking the door behind her. And I'm glad you came. Upstairs in my apartment, I lent her dry clothes, a faded band t-shirt and sweatpants that were too short for her. She looked different in them. Younger and less untouchable. The storm howled outside, rattling my windows as we settled on opposite ends of my worn couch, the diary and locket between us like offerings. I've been thinking about them constantly, Jennifer admitted, running her finger over the locket's tarnished surface, about the choice they made. To kill Thomas? I asked, pouring us each a glass of wine. To choose each other, despite everything. She accepted the wine with a small smile. It would have been easier to walk away. The radiator clanked and hissed, fighting against the bitter cold seeping through the old building's bones. Outside, the world had disappeared behind a curtain of white. Inside, the space between us on the couch felt like its own kind of battlefield. Why did you become a nun, Jennifer? I asked suddenly. The real reason. She stared into her wine glass, the red liquid catching the lamplight. Safety, she finally said. After my parents died, I was lost. The church offered structure, purpose, and, I prompted when she trailed off. And I was running away from myself. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean closer to hear. From feelings I didn't understand. Desires that frightened me. The confession hung in the air between us. I took a sip of wine, letting the silence stretch. My last girlfriend left me for a man, I said finally. Said she was just experimenting with me. That was 2 years ago. I haven't let anyone close since. Jennifer's eyes met mine, understanding passing between us. We're both hiding, aren't we? Maybe we are. The storm knocked out my power around midnight. We lit candles, their warm glow casting dancing shadows across the walls. The temperature in the apartment dropped steadily. We huddled under blankets, moving closer for warmth until our shoulders touched. "Tell me about your tattoos," Jennifer said, her fingers hovering near the intricate designs on my arm. "Go ahead," I said. "And you can touch them." Her fingertips traced the lines of ink on my skin, sending shivers that had nothing to do with the cold. "Each one has a story," I explained, guiding her hand to different images. "This phoenix was my first, after my mom died. This compass was when I opened the shop. These flowers are for the seasons I've survived alone." "They're beautiful," she whispered. Her touch lingered on my wrist, where a small key was inked. "And this one? That's for the doors I haven't found yet, the ones that might open someday." Her eyes met mine in the candlelight. "Mila, I'm scared. Of the storm? Of this, of us, of what I feel when I'm with you." I took her hand, turning it over to expose her palm. "Your great-grandmother was scared too, but she still chose love. And lost everything." "Did she?" "She lived honestly, at least with Elizabeth. That's more than most people ever do." Jennifer's other hand came up to cup my cheek, her touch tentative. "I took vows," she whispered, but she was leaning closer. "To God or to yourself?" I asked, my lips inches from hers. "I don't know anymore. When we kissed this time, it was different, deeper, hungrier. The storm forgotten, we explored each other with increasing urgency." My hand slipped under her borrowed t-shirt, finding warm skin. She gasped against my mouth, her body arching toward mine. "Are you sure?" I whispered, giving her one last chance to retreat. Her answer was to pull me closer, her hands tangling in my hair. We moved together on the narrow couch, discovering each other by candlelight as the storm raged outside. Her skin was softer than I'd imagined, her touch more confident than I'd expected. When she cried out, her face transformed by pleasure, I felt something break and heal inside me simultaneously. Afterward, we lay tangled together under blankets, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing patterns in her hair. The candles had burned low, casting the room in a gentle glow. "What are you thinking?" I asked, feeling her heartbeat against my skin. "That I should feel guilty," she said softly. "But I don't." I tightened my arms around her. "And tomorrow?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Finally she said, "Oh, tomorrow I'll have to face what this means. For my vows, for my life." I wanted to ask her to stay, to choose me over everything she'd known, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I held her closer, as the storm continued to transform the world outside, knowing that when morning came, we would both have to face the consequences of this night. What I didn't know then was that Jennifer would disappear for weeks afterward, leaving me with nothing but memories and the lingering scent of her on my sheets. 3 weeks passed without a word from Jennifer. I called St. Mary's Convent twice, only to be told Sister Jennifer was in spiritual retreat and couldn't be disturbed. The diary sat untouched on my coffee table, the locket beside it like abandoned treasures from another life. February brought more snow and fewer clients. I spent my days sketching new designs and my nights reading and rereading Elizabeth's words, searching for clues about what had happened after she and Maria had dealt with Thomas. The final pages of the diary were filled with coded messages and veiled references that made little sense without context. "Where are you?" I whispered to the empty apartment one night, not sure if I was asking about Jennifer or the missing pieces of our great-grandmother's story. I threw myself into researching Thomas Lee, digging through Arlington's historical archives and online genealogy databases. What I found sent a chill down my spine. There was no record of Thomas leaving town for business. Instead, there was a small newspaper clipping from 1924 reporting that the body of an unidentified man had been found in the river outside Arlington. The case had never been solved. "Jesus," I muttered, staring at the grainy image. Had our great-grandmothers actually murdered him? And if so, what did that mean for Jennifer and me? Were we destined to repeat their pattern of passion and violence? The bell above my shop door jingled one Tuesday afternoon, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked up, expecting a walk-in client, but instead found Jennifer standing there. She was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, but still beautiful in her civilian clothes, a simple gray sweater and jeans. "You're back," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I needed time," she replied, approaching my counter cautiously. "To think, to pray." "And did it help, the praying?" She gave a small, sad smile. Not as much as I'd hoped." We stood in awkward silence, 3 weeks and 1,000 unspoken words between us. Finally I asked, "Why are you here, Jennifer?" "I found something," she said, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. "In the convent archives. It's about Maria, after everything happened." My heart quickened. "What is it?" "Church records from 1925. Maria confessed to Father Donovan about her relationship with Elizabeth and Thomas, and about what they did to him." I gestured to the back room. "Oh, show me." Over cups of coffee, Jennifer spread out the photocopied pages. They contained the priest's private notes about Maria's confession, not the confession itself, which would have remained sealed, but his reflections afterward. "The burden this young woman carries is immense," Jennifer read aloud. "She believes her actions were necessary to protect herself and another from a man's dangerous obsession. While I cannot absolve her of the sin of taking a life, I wonder if God's mercy might view her circumstances with compassion." "So they did kill him," I said quietly. Jennifer nodded. "It seems so. But there's more." She turned the page. She speaks of a child conceived before these tragic events, a child that will never know its true parentage. We stared at each other, the implications sinking in. "Maria was pregnant," I whispered. "But with whose child? Thomas's or—" "The timing suggests it could have been either," Jennifer said. "She married William Wilson 6 months after Thomas disappeared. Everyone would have assumed it was his. Which means one of us might not be related to who we think we are," I said, trying to process this revelation. Jennifer reached across the table, taking my hand. "And I've been thinking about this for days. If Maria's child, my grandfather, was actually Elizabeth's biological child somehow, then we'd be related," I finished, the thought both disturbing and fascinating. But that's not possible, is it? 2 women can't." "No," she agreed. "But if they used Thomas somehow, if he was just a means to an end for them to have a child together—" The shop phone rang, breaking the moment. I ignored it. "Why did you stay away so long?" I asked, the question I'd been holding back finally escaping. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "Sister Agnes died. She was like a mother to me after my parents passed. Her last weeks. I needed to be there." Guilt washed over me. While I'd been wondering if Jennifer was avoiding me, she'd been watching someone she loved die. "I'm so sorry," I said, squeezing her hand. "It made me think about life, about choices." She looked down at our joined hands. "Agnes joined the convent when she was 18. On her deathbed, she told me she sometimes wondered what her life would have been like if she'd made a different choice." The confession hung in the air between us. I waited, letting her find her words. "I don't want to wonder, Mila," she finally said, meeting my eyes. "I don't want to look back at 80 and question everything." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need to figure out who I am, what I want. And I can't do that behind convent walls." Hope bloomed in my chest, but I tamped it down. "And us? That night during the storm?" A small smile touched her lips. "That night showed me there are kinds of devotion the church never taught me about." I leaned across the table and kissed her softly, feeling her respond with a certainty that hadn't been there before. When we parted, I pressed my forehead against hers. "We still have more to discover," I said. "Out about them. About us." "I know," she replied. "But this time, I'm not running away." Jennifer spent more time at my shop than at the convent over the next 2 weeks. We pored over the diary and documents, piecing together the story of Elizabeth and Maria. The more we discovered, the more I felt their presence guiding us. 2 women who had loved against all odds, whose choices still echoed through our lives nearly a century later. One rainy March afternoon, as Jennifer was helping me organize my flash art for a new display, the shop door opened with such force that the bell nearly flew off its hook. Mother Superior stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold fury. "Sister Jennifer," she said, her voice cutting through the shop like ice. "So this is where you've been disappearing to?" Jennifer froze beside me, her face draining of color. "Mother Agnes, I can explain." "No explanation is necessary," the older woman interrupted, her eyes flicking dismissively over my tattoos before returning to Jennifer. "Sister Catherine saw you entering this establishment yesterday. I had hoped she was mistaken." I stepped forward, placing myself slightly in front of Jennifer. "This is my shop. Jennifer's been helping me with a research project about our families." Mother Superior's eyebrow arched. "Und research? Is that what you call it?" She turned back to Jennifer. "Your absence from prayers has been noted. Your distraction during services has been concerning. And now this." "I've been discovering the truth about my family," Jennifer said, her voice stronger than I expected. "About who I am." "Who you are?" Mother Superior's laugh was brittle. "I know exactly who you are, Jennifer Wilson. Or have you forgotten the circumstances that brought you to us?" Jennifer flinched as if slapped. I looked between them, confused. "What's she talking about?" I asked. "Nothing," Jennifer said quickly. "It's not important." "Not important?" Mother Superior stepped closer. "Perhaps your new friend should know about the young woman who came to our doors 10 years ago, fleeing scandal after being caught with her female professor at university, the one whose parents had disowned her for her unnatural inclinations." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Jennifer had never mentioned this part of her past. "That's enough," Jennifer said, her voice shaking. "You sought sanctuary with us," Mother Superior continued relentlessly. "So you begged for our help in overcoming your sinful nature. And now here you are, falling back into the same pattern." I felt Jennifer trembling beside me. Without thinking, I reached for her hand, lacing our fingers together in full view of Mother Superior. "With all due respect," I said, struggling to keep my voice level, "Jennifer's past is her own, and whatever brought her to the convent then doesn't dictate who she can be now." Mother Superior's gaze dropped to our joined hands, her lips thinning to a bloodless line. "See, the serpent has already done its work." She turned to Jennifer. "You have a choice to make, sister. Return to the convent now and recommit yourself to your vows, or consider yourself released from them, and from our protection." The ultimatum hung in the air between them. I held my breath, my hand tightening around Jennifer's. "I need time to think," Jennifer finally said. "You have until Vespers tomorrow," Mother Superior replied. "After that, your place will be given to someone worthy of it." After she left, Jennifer collapsed into a chair, her face in her hands. I knelt before her, gently pulling her fingers away from her tear-stained cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked softly. "I was ashamed," she whispered. "Not of who I am, but of how I ran away from it. I let them convince me my feelings were wrong, something to be prayed away." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Now? Now I know better." She took a shuddering breath. "But there's more you don't know. About the diary. About us." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper I hadn't seen before. "And found this hidden in the convent archives. It's the final page of Elizabeth's diary, torn out and kept separate." My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was the same flowing script I'd come to know so well, but the ink was faded, the paper yellowed with age. "My dearest Maria," I read aloud. "By the time you read this, I will be gone. The burden of our secret has become too heavy to bear. Thomas haunts my dreams, his face as the river took him, his final plea for mercy. We thought ourselves justified, but I fear we have damned our souls." Jennifer nodded for me to continue. "The child you carry is innocent of our sins. Whether it is his by blood or conceived through our desperate plan matters not. What matters is that you give this child a life untainted by our darkness. William is a good man who loves you. Let him be the father our child deserves." I looked up at Jennifer, my mind racing. "Oh, her child? So Elizabeth considered herself the parent too?" "Keep reading," Jennifer said quietly. "I leave Arlington with the knowledge that a piece of me lives on in you and in the life growing within you. Perhaps someday, when our sin has been forgotten, our bloodlines will cross again in happier circumstances. Until then, I remain eternally yours, in this life and whatever comes after. All my love, Elizabeth. The final confession sat heavy between us. Our great-grandmothers had not only been lovers, not only committed a desperate act to free themselves from Thomas, they had somehow planned for Maria to conceive a child they would consider their own. "So we are related," I said slowly. "Through Thomas, at least." "It seems so," Jennifer replied. "Does that change things for you?" I thought about it, about the complex web of love, desperation, and hope that had brought us to this moment. They were distant cousins at most, and we're even more distant. So no, it doesn't change how I feel about you. Jennifer's eyes filled with fresh tears. Mother Superior knows all this. She found these documents years ago. She's been holding it over me, using my family's sinful past as proof that I needed salvation. Anger flared in my chest. That's manipulation, not guidance. I know that now. She straightened her shoulders, a new resolve in her eyes. I won't let her use my past, or our great-grandmother's past, against me anymore. I took her hands in mine. "What will you do?" "Face her," Jennifer said simply. "With the truth. All of it." The next morning, I drove Jennifer to St. Mary's Convent for what she called her last confession. The stone building loomed against the spring sky, its shadow stretching across the manicured lawn like a warning. "You don't have to do this," I said, killing the engine of my beat-up Camaro. "We could just leave. Start over somewhere else." Jennifer touched the locket around her neck. Our great-grandmother's legacy that she now wore openly. Running away didn't work for Elizabeth. It won't work for me either. I watched her walk up the steps, her back straight, her blonde hair catching the sunlight. She looked nothing like the uncertain nun who had wandered into my shop months ago. Whatever happened inside those walls, I knew the woman who emerged would be transformed. While waiting, I drove to Arlington Cemetery. The groundskeeper directed me to the oldest section, where I found them, Elizabeth Parker and Maria Wilson, buried in family plots separated by a narrow path. Close, but not together, even in death. I knelt between their graves, placing a hand on each weathered stone. "We found your diary," I said softly. "We know what you did, what you sacrificed." The spring breeze rustled through the trees overhead, carrying the scent of fresh earth and new growth. "I'll take care of her," I promised. "Better than you two could take care of each other." When I returned to the convent, Jennifer was sitting on the front steps, a small suitcase beside her. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, her expression peaceful. "It's done," she said simply as I helped her with the suitcase. "I'm released from my vows." "How do you feel?" I asked, searching her face for regret. A small smile touched her lips. "Free." In the car, she told me about her confrontation with Mother Superior, how she'd laid out everything we'd discovered, the diary, the confession, the hidden page, the locket, as evidence of a family history that couldn't be denied or prayed away. "I told her I wasn't running from my past anymore," Jennifer said, her voice stronger with each word. "That I was embracing it, all of it, the good and the bad." "And what did she say?" "That I was making the biggest mistake of my life." Jennifer's laugh held no bitterness, but her eyes said she was afraid that I'd found a truth outside the walls she's built around herself. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the Arlington streets giving way to open highway. Jennifer had asked me to take her somewhere meaningful, and I knew exactly where to go. The cabin belonged to a client who let me use it occasionally, a small, rustic place overlooking the lake where Arlington's founders had first settled. As we walked the shoreline, Jennifer told me more about her life before the convent, her strict religious upbringing, the exhilaration and terror of falling in love with her professor, the devastating rejection from her parents. "They died thinking I'd been cured," she said, skipping a stone across the water's surface. "I never got to show them who I really am." I took her hand, our fingers intertwining naturally now. "And who is that?" She turned to me, the setting sun painting her face in gold. "I'm still figuring that out, but I know I'm Elizabeth and Maria's descendant. I know I'm a woman who can love deeply, even when it's difficult, and I know I'm someone who's done hiding." When she kissed me this time, there was no hesitation, no fear, just the certainty of a woman who had made her choice and found peace in it. Her lips tasted of promise and possibility, of stories yet to be written. That night, as we lay together in the cabin's small bedroom, the moonlight spilling across tangled sheets, Jennifer traced the lines of my tattoos with reverent fingers. "I want one," she said suddenly. I propped myself up on one elbow. "Own a tattoo? You?" She nodded, her blue eyes serious. "Something to mark this transition, this rebirth." "What design?" "A phoenix," she said without hesitation. "A star rising from ashes. Like yours, but different. My own version." I kissed her shoulder, imagining how my ink would look on her pale skin. "I'll design something perfect for you." Later, as she slept beside me, I slipped out of bed and sketched by moonlight, a delicate phoenix with wings that formed a protective circle, flames that looked like flowing water. A design that honored both our pasts, while creating something entirely new. In the morning, we visited our great-grandmother's graves together. Jennifer placed wildflowers on each stone, then stood between them, bridging the gap that had separated them in life. "Thank you," she whispered to the silent markers, "for showing us the way." As we walked back to the car, hand in hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a burden I hadn't known I was carrying. Our great-grandmothers had lived in shadows, their love constrained by their time. But Jennifer and I could walk in sunlight, could choose each other openly. "Ready to go home?" I asked, as we reached the cemetery gates. Jennifer smiled, the spring breeze playing with her hair. "Oh, I already am." 6 months passed like a dream. Jennifer moved into my apartment above the shop, transforming the space with small touches, potted herbs on the windowsill, soft throws on the couch, the scent of lavender in the air. She found work at Arlington's community center, counseling troubled teens with a compassion born from her own struggles. My business flourished unexpectedly. Jennifer's organizational skills brought order to my chaotic booking system, and her gentle presence put nervous first-timers at ease. We made an unlikely but effective team, the tattooed artist and the former nun, building something neither of us had dared imagine before. "Your 3 o'clock is here," Jennifer called one autumn afternoon, poking her head into my work area, the sleeve extension. I looked up from sterilizing my equipment. "Thanks. You heading out?" "Meeting with the youth group." She smiled, the confidence in her expression still new enough to make my heart skip. "Don't forget we're having dinner with Tara and Marcus tonight." That was new too, friends, social engagements, a life that extended beyond work and solitude. Jennifer had drawn me out of my shell as surely as I'd helped her break free of hers. Later that evening, after dinner with our friends, we walked home through Arlington's historic district. The trees were turning, their leaves the same fiery red as my hair. Jennifer's hand felt warm in mine, her laughter carrying on the crisp air as I recounted a client's ridiculous tattoo request. "Move in with me," I said suddenly, stopping beneath a streetlight. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "I already live with you." "No, I mean, let's get our own place. Something bigger. Something that's ours from the start, not just my space that you've moved into." Her smile could have lit up the entire street. "Oh, you asking me to put down roots with you, Mila Parker?" "I guess I am." I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "What do you say?" Her answer was a kiss that left me dizzy, right there under the Arlington stars. The next day, I closed the shop early. Jennifer was working late, giving me time for my surprise. I'd been designing her tattoo for months, refining it until every line spoke of her journey, our journey. Tonight was the anniversary of finding the diary, and I wanted to mark it in a way neither of us would forget. I set up my station with special care, laying out new needles, mixing custom colors. The design waited on my light table, a phoenix rising from ashes, its wings forming a protective circle around a small locket shape. Within the locket, 2 tiny female silhouettes faced each other, eternal and inseparable. When Jennifer arrived, her eyes widened at the sight of rose petals leading to my workstation, candles casting a warm glow over the usually clinical space. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice soft with wonder. I handed her the design. "And if you still want it." She traced the lines with trembling fingers. "It's perfect." "But why tonight?" "1 year ago, you walked into my shop looking for answers about our past." I took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Tonight, I want to mark our future." The intimacy of tattooing someone you love is unlike anything else. the trust as they surrender their skin to your needle, the focus required to make each line perfect, knowing it will become part of them forever. Jennifer lay still under my hands, her breathing steady as I worked, occasionally meeting my eyes with a smile that said everything words couldn't. 3 hours later, it was done, the phoenix taking flight across her shoulder blade, delicate yet powerful. As I wiped away the last traces of blood and excess ink, Jennifer examined it in the mirror, tears welling in her eyes. "Now we match," she said, touching the edge of my own phoenix tattoo. "Not exactly the same," I replied, "but connected." That night, we celebrated with champagne on our rooftop, the diary and locket displayed on the small table between us. The autumn air was cool against our skin, as we toasted our great-grandmothers, ourselves, and the strange twists of fate that had brought us together. "I have something for you," Jennifer said, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small velvet box. "It's not what you think, not yet, anyway. But it's a promise." Inside was a delicate silver key on a chain. "For our new place," she explained. "And I found one today. A little cottage near the community center with enough room for your studio and a garden for me." I slipped the chain around my neck, the key resting beside my own tattoo of a key, the one I'd told her represented doors not yet opened. "Looks like I found the door this key was meant for," I said, my voice thick with emotion. As we held each other under the stars, I thought about Elizabeth and Maria, how they'd loved in shadows, how they'd sacrificed everything for moments of connection. Jennifer and I had inherited their passion, their determination, but not their tragedy. We could live openly, love freely in a way they never could. The diary sat between us, its pages containing a story that had ended in separation, but it had also contained the seeds of our beginning, a love that had waited generations to fully bloom. "To Elizabeth and Maria," Jennifer whispered, raising her glass. "May they know that their story didn't end with them." "To us," I added, touching my glass to hers, "and to all the pages we have yet to fill."